Protecting the coastline has been the main concern of the United States since it gained independence. Back in the days before airplanes, most of this country's enemies had to come by sea, so coastal forts were a cheap and practical substitute for a big army or navy. All they had to do was build strong enough fortifications to block any landings, and it did the trick. But now it's all in the past, yet shores still remain the most obvious and expected point of attack, as well as the place where a potential enemy of the U.S. is especially vulnerable. It's believed that no military ship will ever be able to land troops on the shores of the United States. To figure out how the U.S. manages to protect itself, I need a lot of coffee. The most unobtrusive reminder to hit the like button for those who forget to do it. And thanks for understanding, you know what. So what's the deal here? The continental U.S. has land borders only with Mexico and Canada, two friendly countries, although, well, never mind, that's a completely different topic. On the east and west, it's just the ocean, so betting on coastal defenses makes sense. Here's a simple fact that everyone who specializes in studying warfare knows: the defending side in a coastal area has a disproportionately large advantage over the attacking one. The idea behind the coastal advantage is based on three main factors. First, geography, which provides natural shelter for the defending side. Second, the proximity of the defending fleet to its own bases. And third, the ability of the coastal fleet to closely cooperate with the relevant air forces and army. Everything's close, both the equipment and reinforcements, if needed, and resources. The coastal zone generally consists of two segments. The first is the marine area, that is the area from the open ocean to the shore, which needs to be controlled to support operations on the land. The second is the shoreline itself. This is the area that can be supported and protected directly from the sea. And of course, the ways to protect these two parts are different. Littoral warfare shares a lot in common with open ocean warfare. However, there are key differences because it's still a different environment, and a very dynamic one. The specifics of the physical environment in littoral warfare create many challenges, but also open up opportunities for the use of naval forces and aviation. But the most important condition for success in littoral warfare, experts say, is having a theory developed in advance. Otherwise, it's simply impossible to properly organize and train the troops. And it's exactly because they are preparing, planning, and strategizing for this war, even if it's only theory, that we have the opportunity to discuss all of this. Just to be clear, I'm relying on the opinion of experts. So what do the experts think about the threats the U.S. coast might face? Well, there's quite a list. It's everything from attacks using manned and unmanned ships to secret missions for underwater sabotage, planting mines, and setting up ambushes for ships coming in and out of ports, to full-scale amphibious landings. I feel like soon enough warships won't be so necessary because producing water combat drones is 1,000 times cheaper and faster. Well, experts in the comments will probably correct me. Or maybe not. The list is quite extensive. This is just part of it. So effective coastal defense requires several systems working together. Only this way can you handle different aspects of the threat. Together, all these systems should form a multi-layered structure to counter and neutralize the enemy's advance. The main goal is to prevent the enemy from getting close to the shore, or at least weaken them as much as possible while they're still on the outer boundaries of the coastal zone. If this isn't possible, the coastal defense should be ready to repel the attack all the way to the shoreline. Of course, any effective defense starts with awareness. To stand up to the enemy, you need to know where they are, how many of them there are, what kind of weapons they have, and all that sort of thing. In the case of the U.S., the outermost detection ring will be formed by satellites, aerial reconnaissance, and patrol vessels in the open sea. They can be supplemented by special coastal surveillance radars. Radars and other sensors are usually deployed along the coastline, somewhere on elevated ground, including towers for early warning beyond the horizon. They can also be set up on oil rigs, wind farms, and other marine infrastructure, as well as on nearby islands. All these defenses will inform the operators, including manned and unmanned planes, surface and subsurface vessels, as well as shore-based missiles to intercept enemy forces. For example, last year, the U.S. Coast Guard signed a contract worth about $10 million with the German company Hensoldt for the delivery of the latest version of the Baseline D or TRS-3D radars. These are really cool devices. 3D multi-mode marine radars for air and surface monitoring. With them, you can detect targets and at the same time use the radars for self-defense, fire support, and aircraft control. The radars automatically detect and track all types of air and sea targets. Okay, the reconnaissance part makes sense. How about the stationary fortifications? Well, the United States and the colonies that preceded them built numerous coastal defense structures to protect major cities, ports, and straits. Construction continued from the colonial era until World War II and was justified. Until a certain time after the 1940s, the authorities realized that stationary fortifications were outdated and useless against planes and missiles. That's why if you take a look at the list of U.S. coastal fortifications, you'll see that all of them were decommissioned in the 20th century. First off, as I've already mentioned, modern warfare relies heavily on air power, missile systems, and naval assets, both for attack and defense. New tech makes it possible to respond quickly to threats without needing stationary installations. Secondly, the U.S. has a massive coastline stretching over 18,600 miles. Defending such a huge area with traditional defensive structures is logistically very tricky and downright pointless from an economic perspective. And finally, third, it's not such a big deal if battleships show up at the shore to shell it. Battleships and other surface ships are vulnerable to all sorts of missiles and air attacks. Cruise missiles, airplanes, these are what work as coastal defenses and can easily be moved to where the threat arises. It's probably worth giving a special mention to land-based anti-ship missiles. In the past, coastal artillery looked something like this. This is what's called a disappearing gun mounted on a disappearing carriage. It allowed the gun to stay hidden from direct fire and observation. The design was simple and usually let the gun recoil, swing back, and drop behind a parapet or into a pit shielded by a wall. But then military aviation began to advance and made these open-top gun emplacements vulnerable to air attacks. So the next and final generation of coastal artillery was installed under thick concrete shields, camouflaged with vegetation to make them almost invisible from above. However, just like stationary fortifications, this kind of weapon has lost its relevance. Nowadays, you can't just hide a cannon in the bushes and concrete. You need flexibility and mobility. With the spread of long-range precision missiles, stationary coastal batteries have become too vulnerable. Mobile systems, on the other hand, remain viable and are considered essential weapons for countering enemy ships. Beyond dealing real damage or even sinking ships, long-range anti-ship missile batteries force enemy warships to stay farther from the shore. This reduces the effectiveness of the enemy's own missiles and forces landing ships to deploy troops far away. And that, too, works to the defender's advantage. It's known that the U.S. Armed Forces are planning to attack naval targets using several artillery systems. First, there's the Tracked Multiple Launch Rocket System M270. Second, there's the Wheeled High Mobility Artillery Rocket System M142. Potential munitions capable of hitting naval targets include the new Precision Strike Missile with a range of 310 miles and the Long Range Anti-Ship Missile Surface Launch. Its surface launch range isn't disclosed, but it's believed to be considerable. Besides that, the U.S. Marine Corps and Army have also fired the Guided Multiple Launch Rocket System at sea targets more than once. Supersonic missiles have a range of 52 miles. But there's another version in development with an extended range of 93 miles. HIMARS and MLRS can carry 6 and 12 GMLRS rockets respectively. These air mobile launch systems and rockets are widely available, and landing troops under such fire, well, it's practically impossible. Besides that, the U.S. has a lot of special military gear that works best in coastal areas. The thing is, fleets designed for open seas lose some of their effectiveness in shallow waters. The shallows turn the draft into a real headache for larger units, cutting down their speed and range. The U.S. has the only Navy in the world capable of global power projection. According to the American doctrine, operations in coastal areas, including ports, harbors, and coastal areas, require, a long quote incoming now, require ships, amphibious ships, and landing craft and patrol craft with the stability and agility to operate effectively in surf, in shallows, and the near-shore areas of the littorals. The U.S. Navy orders exactly such equipment. I won't list all the ships and capabilities of the Navy because it'd take a whole video, even to just name the points from the list. It's enough to say that in 2020, there were 19 combat ships of the Freedom and Independence classes designed for littoral warfare, 11 active aircraft carriers, and 67 active submarines, 32 major amphibious ships, as well as a lot of patrol and amphibious vessels. But that's not all. The U.S. could easily strengthen its coastline by setting up minefields, even underwater ones. When politicians, military leaders, and analysts compare the strengths of different fleets, they usually think about the number of ships, submarines, planes, and other regular assets. However, with the growing threat of sea mines worldwide, the ability to deploy and destroy mines is another crucial factor. Naval mine warfare remains a key element of naval power. In terms of availability, variety, ease of deployment, and potential impact on naval operations, mines are often seen as one of the most attractive types of weapon. Think about it. Naval mines are hard to detect, hard to neutralize, and they can be a deadly threat to any ship. Because of this, in recent years, sea mines are seeing something of a revival. The U.S. Navy is focused on modernizing its mine detection and neutralization skills, and at the same time, it's developing its own better versions. The Navy currently uses the Quick Strike family of sea mines, which are dropped from aircraft and mobile submarine mines. The Quick Strike family includes 3 types of mines known as MK62, MK63, and MK64. They're converted from MK80 series high-explosive bombs and equipped with a fusing system that activates the weapon when it detects the right signals. Recent improvements to mines allow planes to deploy them accurately from any altitude, and with mines like the ER types, they can direct them at targets up to 40 miles away. This speeds up the process of laying minefields overall and significantly reduces the vulnerability of planes carrying the weapon. Otherwise, they'd have to fly low and slow to complete the mission. In addition to these upgraded quick strikes, the Navy's developing a new air-dropped mine called Hammerhead. Another important thing is speed. Just randomly laying mines everywhere and hoping they'll help is risky and costly. So if the U.S. needs to use a minefield to protect the shores, they'll choose the area where enemy ships are headed and quickly set up defense exactly where it's needed. The same goes for landmines. The M136 Volcano is an automated mine-laying system developed by the U.S. Army in the 1980s. Even though a lot of time has gone by, it's still relevant. For instance, last year, Taiwan wanted to buy some of these high-speed mine deployment systems from the U.S. M136 Volcano is designed to be mounted on helicopters and trucks, which will then fly at low altitudes or drive at a set speed, while the devices shoot out anti-tank and anti-personnel mines covering hundreds of square feet. It's interesting that mines can be set to deactivate after a certain period of time. This feature means the mines will eventually become harmless, allowing sappers to safely remove them. Also, mines have metal parts, so they can be easily detected using traditional mine detectors that sappers use. Unfortunately, this safety feature means that enemy forces can clear the mines pretty quickly, so the Volcano system is usually used to create a quick minefield designed to slow down enemy troops under direct fire. The idea is to scatter mines fast in a spot where the enemy won't have time to locate and disable them. For example, such a minefield works great on a beach just before an amphibious landing. As soon as the invading forces try to hit the beach covered by these mines, the defenders just need to focus accurate fire on the attackers and wait for their armored vehicles to run into the mines. Oh, and one more key point. There's the so-called Ottawa Treaty, which obliges countries to stop using anti-personnel mines. But major powers, including both past and current producers of landmines, aren't part of it. That includes the U.S. Here, the countries marked in blue are parties to the Ottawa Treaty. So what's the takeaway here? Any landing of Marines or other assault forces is way more complicated than just crossing a beach. History shows that amphibious operations take over a year of planning and then another year of training. For an amphibious assault to succeed, the forces need to be not just well-trained, but also equipped with specialized gear and then coordinated with naval and air support. After storming the beach or shoreline, they need reinforcements fast to hold their ground and push further inland. Even on its own, that's a huge challenge, but being able to pull it all off together is the real cornerstone of a nation's military strength. So, landing troops on a coastline is a task that not every army can pull off. But if the landing succeeds, it'll pose a serious threat to the country and prove that the enemy is really strong. So it's in the best interest of the U.S., and any other country for that matter, to do whatever it takes to ensure an invading force's landing mission goes down in flames. Today, all military specialists are convinced that the U.S. is doing this, or will do it if necessary. Experts argue that large-scale landing operations on a shore as well protected as the U.S. coastline will almost certainly end in total failure. What's in store for us in the future? For nearly 70 years, the U.S. Air Force maintained continuous air superiority over every battlefield where American troops fought. Things are changing. In recent years, drones have been used more and more, and with greater effectiveness. Today, they fill the skies over battlefields in numbers that would have been unimaginable just a couple of years ago. Drones carry out critical missions in surveillance, intelligence gathering, early warning, and precision strikes. Experts claim that the U.S. military is totally unprepared for this kind of war. The U.S. drone arsenal doesn't have much to boast about right now, and even more importantly, the American military today lacks reliable counter-drone systems. At least they have nothing that could effectively protect U.S. forces from attacks by small drones, let alone mass strikes. And this is a clear oversight, a gap in defense that's only become apparent lately. It's highly likely that coastal defense in the U.S. will be heading in this direction soon, focusing on drone defense and their active use. And here's proof. From 2021 to 2023, the U.S. Navy's Task Force 59 successfully tested the integration of UAVs, USVs, and UUVs with manned ships in the waters stretching from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf. All of this for deploying a multinational fleet of over 100 drones in the region. So a drone army at the service of the U.S. is a very real possibility for the near future. Laser defense. What else does the U.S. have to keep an enemy from getting close to its shores? Well, for instance, laser weapons. Recently, the U.S. military deployed such systems abroad to protect its forces and allies, marking the first known use of energy weapons for air defense in military history. Where exactly the lasers were placed is unknown, though. But that makes sense. Surprise is always an advantage. We're talking about the P-Hell weapon based on the 20-kilowatt Locust system. It was first deployed in operations in November 2022, and by early 2024, another system of this kind was brought into service. Officials have said that in specific scenarios, these laser systems have shown themselves to be extremely effective against certain types of threats. For example, it's been confirmed that lasers were used to take out enemy drones and sometimes did an even better job than anticipated. For years, the Pentagon has been exploring the use of laser weapons, mainly for defense purposes. According to a 2023 U.S. Congress report, high-powered lasers could be a solid way to fend off air attacks, like helicopters and low-flying strike aircraft. They can also take out missiles, artillery shells, and mortar bombs. In short, pretty useful stuff. New missile. Everyone knows the mainland U.S. is really well protected. But what about Hawaii? Well, the military doesn't just sit around there either, and they're always ready to defend the country. Take the Marine Littoral Regiments, for example. They're formed to defend the fleet and allied ships from coastal positions and to support combined ground and naval operations. Their gear includes remote-controlled tactical vehicles and naval missiles, and just recently, the 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment added the Nemesis system to its arsenal, which is a major piece of weaponry for taking on enemy ships from the shore. What's more, the new system has become a key part of the arsenal and impressed the military so much that the U.S. plans to order 97 Nemesis missile systems in the current fiscal year and another 24 next year. Overall, the U.S. isn't holding back on defense spending. For instance, the Norwegian company Kongsberg landed a record deal to supply missile systems to the U.S. Navy. According to Defense News, the 5-year contract is valued at $900 million, with the main product being the Naval Strike Missile, already in use on littoral combat ships and Constellation-class frigates. Fixing the mistakes. Those into military tech and warships have probably heard about the Zumwalt destroyer at least once. This $7.5 billion ship was designed as a platform to support marine landings, equipped with an advanced gun system capable of firing guided shells. Sounds awesome, no doubt about it. But this system got scrapped because the shells turned out to be way too expensive, costing anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million apiece. Despite being such an expensive failure, destroyers are still the most high-tech units in the U.S. Navy. Until recently, they couldn't find a proper use for them, but now the Navy has started equipping them with hypersonic missiles. The first of 3 ships of this class is already undergoing upgrades at a shipyard in Mississippi, where workers are installing new launch systems to replace the old ones. It's reported that the new weapon will let the ship carry out quick, precise strikes over long distances. The thing is, these new missiles can travel at speeds more than 5 times faster than sound. On top of that, they're highly maneuverable, making them harder to intercept. Each Zumwalt-class destroyer is expected to get 4 launchers. Each would hold 3 hypersonic missiles, so in total, a single ship would carry 12 warheads. They began modifying the first ship back in 2023, and if all goes well, all 3 ships should be fully combat ready by 2027-28. However, it's important to keep in mind that this project will be costly. Estimates say buying and maintaining 300 of these missiles over 20 years will cost nearly $18 billion. Advanced intelligence. In 2024, at a military exhibition in the U.S. Capitol, Washington experts from the Naval Research Laboratory presented a new portable reconnaissance system for coastal areas. The project, called Littoral Lens, is a device designed for a single user, equipped with a computer for automatically collecting and analyzing data on the speed of coastal water currents and wave conditions. Why is this necessary? The collected data allows real-time determination of movement dynamics. Additionally, the development is aimed at improving tactical decision-making during operations. Also, a new device, compact in size, allows data analysis right on mobile platforms. This means that Littoral Lens can literally enhance the functionality of both manned and unmanned vehicles, including amphibious combat vehicles. Plus, the device was designed to work in the harsh weather conditions of coastal zones. In general, it turned out to be a versatile assistant for operations on water. Defense drills. Guam plays a crucial role in the U.S. military strategy in the Indo-Pacific region. Located just 1,800 miles from the Chinese coast, it's an ideal platform for showing off American military power. However, this distance also falls within the reach of Chinese medium-range ballistic missiles. Well, you know what I mean. When you're close to a potential enemy, there has to be something for protection. And this is something actively being tested. On December 10th, 2024, the U.S. military held unique exercises to intercept a ballistic missile on Guam, which is part of their defense training against potential threats. The Aegis defense system deployed in the area launched an intercept missile from Anderson Air Force Base. The goal of the exercises was achieved, and this shows the readiness of the American defense in this region. During testing, the newest radar station in the Aegis system located on Guam successfully detected a target launched from an aircraft. Then an interceptor missile was fired from a surface-to-air missile system, destroying the target at a distance of over 230 miles from the island shores. The U.S. destroyer USS Milius and the Japanese destroyer JS Haguro also participated in the drills, providing air defense from the sea. You didn't forget about the like, did you? See you later.